Craig Senior joined Toastmasters in 1994. Since then, he achieved Distinguished Toastmaster and won 9 district speech contests and once placed third in the region. Craig is, like us, very busy, so he developed a method to rapidly transform speech idea into a finished speech product while achieving good enough quality. He delivered this training at many Toastmasters clubs, Toastmasters Leadership Institute events, and a Toastmasters regional conference and the Canadian Association of Professional Speakers. For many, even professional speakers, this workshop was a real eye-opener. Today, you will definitely take away something that you can use. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to Craig Senior.
Thank you very much. You're all new to writing speeches, or fairly new, some of you. I assume you're doing a Speechcraft course, and let's just assume everyone's fairly new to preparing speeches. Now, some of you might view giving a speech as some kind of holy journey or something, like it's so important, and it's possible that you are staying up way too late and working way too hard preparing your speeches. Is that possible? Some people are doing that, very common. And I've heard people say to me that they left Toastmasters because they didn't have time. I thought, well, that's terrible, because if they're not in Toastmasters, they're not receiving the benefit of the program. And I said, time for what? They said, preparing speeches. I said, well, we have to fix that problem. So tonight, in about 45 minutes or so, we're going to go through the method that I use for preparing good enough speeches, faster and easier. Not quite as much work. Now let's look at some common problems. How many of you have trouble coming up with ideas? Your mind is blank and you're struggling to put something on the page. Is that common? All right, we're going to fix that for sure. And how many have so many ideas in your head you don't know where to start? It's just ideas, ideas, ideas. And someone said to me, or I saw online, that when they prepare speeches, they start drafting. And I thought, drafting what? When does it end? Another person said, start with research. And I asked, research what? How do you know when to end? Generally, we're doing speeches that are 5 to 7 minutes long. You don't need to have the whole library of books in 5 to 7 minutes. You need to have 5 to 7 minutes worth of material. If your opening is 1 minute and your conclusion was 1 minute, that's now cut it down to 5 minutes worth of material, and that's it. So we want to remove some of the barriers that we have, some of the struggle that we have to preparing speeches. Let's move on to the next problem. How many start with Google, and what are you going to search for? Who knows? And how many of you have ideas like crazy and you're drafting, and it never ends, and you wind up with an hour's worth of material, and then you're struggling to cut it down? I help quite a few speech contest speakers, and they send me their first draft. And it's always a wall of text. And I take it and I structure it for them. And invariably, we get rid of somewhere in the neighborhood of 10 to 20% of the content without even thinking about it. And then we can start to add valuable material. How many of you use mind maps? The mind mappers? There is a place in the world for you. How many have no idea what a mind map is? If you have not a clue what a mind map is, write it down, look it up. It's a very useful tool. But again, where does it end? And so we're going to distill our minds and our talks to keep that monkey quiet. We want to be at peace with our work. We don't want to struggle with what we're doing. There is a solution, and the solution, I called it 5 Steps to Impact. If anyone has a better title for it, please send it to me and I'll change the title of it. We want to remove your frustration. Aha, there's an idea. So here it is. Your 5 to 7 minute speech is right there. That's the whole speech right there. Now, when we start to work on this speech, as I said, we don't want to start with research. We don't want to start with drafting. What could we start with? And feel free to leave your mics open, whoever wants to talk. And if you just want to listen, well, that's fine too. Yeah, Ryan.
Like the introduction?
Yes, and what would go in the introduction?
Templated like, hello, or thank you, Mr. and Mrs. Toastmaster.
Okay.
I'm Toastmaster, and then you kind of segue into there.
Excellent. Now there's a problem in here. If you start with the introduction, how do you know the body of the speech and the conclusion are going to match it, are going to continue on the same theme? So there's an element that shows up in the opening, but it isn't necessarily the whole opening where we start thinking about our speech. Anybody else? No, you have a handout. Feel free to open your handout. If you've printed it. If you got it in fillable PDF, feel free to add these words in there as we go. We begin with the thesis. The thesis is one sentence or a couple of words that details the one main point that the audience is going away with. One main point. Now in Toastmasters, we're in the oratorical gymnasium, so you don't have to struggle to come up with the right speech, the life-changing speech, the ultimate spiritual journey for your audience. This is the exercise room where we talk about anything. Now, Scott went through how to come up with speech topics, and I'm here to say anything. And this is just one sentence, a couple of words. How long does it take you to come up with one sentence? Anyone? These are not trick questions, they're mathematical questions.
One sentence. How long does it take you to come up with one sentence?
Yes, sir.
A few seconds.
Few seconds. All right, we're going to stretch it out to 2 minutes. Give yourself 2 minutes to come up with one sentence. And if you're spending more time than that, you're overthinking it.
2 minutes. Okay.
So I want to keep track of the math on this one because it's going to go quick. So it could be the difference between, well, I think I'd like to do a speech about taxation. Taxation would be a theme. It's not a thesis. A thesis would be, our taxes are too high, or our taxes are too low. So make a definitive statement, your point in your speech. This is not a theme, but a thesis. Okay, everyone got that? So it's not speak about, it's make a point. Step 2, what happens then? Drafting, research.
Your main
No,
point?
pardon?
Your main point?
Well, very close, very close. Step 2 is to come up with the headings or the subpoints that are to follow. Now, my recommendation to you is to speak about subjects you already know, which removes research from it. If you're okay doing research, then it's okay at this point to say, study on that, statistic on that. You don't have to have the answer yet, but just write it down. How much we spend on healthcare or something, whatever it might be at this point, just write it down and do the research later. Don't stop the process. Got it? Keep that monkey quiet. Because you're going to want the monkey brain. Oh no, you got to go do your research. You got to. And the next thing you know, you're up past midnight and you're saying, I don't have time to do this. And you say, time for what? Preparing speeches. And you go, well, you're right. So distill that time down. So if it was, let's say our taxes are too low and we need higher taxes. Well, what we want to say, we want to use our taxes for better health care and better roads. And I'm now done identifying my headings. That's as much time as I would give it. So let's stretch it. Each heading, let's make it a minute each. So if it was 2 headings, then that would be 2 minutes. Or if you say, well, I think I can, in 2 or 3 minutes, come up with a lot of ideas. Who's the brainstormers here? Who likes brainstorming? Okay, this is your time. You would take 2 to 3, stretch it out to 4 minutes to write down all the possible headings in your talk. And then look at it and go, now which ones would I like to do today? And among the ones you wrote in this room, it doesn't matter. Pick 2 and go with it. Do the exercise. Don't get stuck with the monkey brain telling you that's not very good. How many of you have received judgment from your monkey brain saying, that's not very good? Yeah, right. I know. I do it myself sometimes, not anymore, but I used to. Now the headings could be organized. So you brainstorm a couple in a number of ways. Who's doing an icebreaker tonight? A very common organization for your icebreaker speech is chronological. Childhood, youth, adulthood. Very, very common. But you could be doing something sequential. I went on a vacation. Where'd you go first? I went to Europe, and then I went to Africa, then I went to Australia. Perfect. You're done. So just work that quickly. And if you get, let's just go and say, I gave my speech and the headings were in the wrong order. Oh no. It's okay. Do the same speech next time and change the order. Fine. This is the exercise room. It's all right. If you're doing a proposal, a common structure for a proposal is to identify the problem, agree with the customer on the problem, and then present the solution. So here in your handout are a bunch of heading sequences that you can use, and this is the list I've come up with. I haven't found it anymore yet. All right, we're going to do a brainstorming exercise in which you are going to come up with a thesis, and then just 2 points to amplify that. Now, who's working on a speech? All right, Ryan, and so everyone come up with a thesis statement and then brainstorm a couple points to amplify it. Now, you could have one thesis and multiple patterns for it. You could do the same thesis a dozen times. If you did multiple speeches with the same thesis in Toastmasters, would they kick you out of the club? Nope. And now someone will argue, oh, but that's not very interesting for the other members. Well, you're not here to write speeches, deliver speeches that are interesting for your fellow club members. They are here to be interested, even if they're faking it, in whatever you speak about for your target audience outside of Toastmasters. We're here to support you. You're not here to entertain or inform or interest us. Of course, some people will speak about Toastmasters related subjects, like you might even have a speech about how to prepare a speech. That does happen here at Toastmasters. Okay, who's ready? Give me your thesis and your 2 points.
I'm ready.
Okay, Michael.
Becoming a realtor in Rwanda.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like a process, maybe.
Yes.
Okay.
So the first heading is registration. I haven't gotten to the second heading yet.
Okay, well, it's coming. It's coming. Excellent start.
Okay.
So while someone else is going, you think about that next step. It should be top of mind. Again, we're speaking about subjects that you'll already know.
Okay.
Someone else, or you would say, well, I'm not quite sure, but I know that I can go and get that answer quickly. Fine. Someone else?
My thesis, a good business analyst is a systems thinker.
Yes. Excellent.
The heading I had three. I'll start with what is systems thinking, why systems thinking, and how does a business analyst demonstrate systems thinking in their work?
Okay, excellent. Now, thinking about this thesis, you could also do a different talk, a whole 5 to 7 minutes, explaining what is systems thinking. So yours is a business analyst needs to be a systems thinker. Excellent. Another related talk, using a lot of the same content, would be informing what is systems thinking. So I just gave you an extra speech topic. You're never going to run out of speeches. I once sat with someone over a coffee, and listening to what they were saying, I came up with 13 speech subjects. And then after we were finished, I turned the paper around and said, here, some speech subjects for you. Yeah, just listening to what they were saying. No one else? We'll get going. So do you see the idea here? Work quickly. Remove the judgment out of your thinking process, get it done, speak often. Of course, if you're speaking for a client at a conference, in the workplace, somewhere, you're going to spend more time at it, but the process is the same. In our chat, I put a link to a speech that I give called Great Expectations, and I wrote it in just, I think, an hour or so, fully scripted, but the outline of it just took me a few seconds. Now, how many of you are brilliant and intelligent? Just the two of, Paul and Ryan. I know you all are. You're just pretending not to be. Because that's your monkey brain telling you have to do more and you have to be super and you have to do it all. We want to quiet that monkey brain. So one of the things that monkey brain is telling us is that we have more ideas, more speech ideas in our head. Say thank you, infinite creativity, park that idea in a file. I call it speech ideas. So I take a moment, write down my speech title or the concept or the thesis, and if I happen to have a couple bullets in my head, I write it down and then I stop, come back to what I'm doing. So I just want to honor the infinite creativity. Okay, we're good? Now, some of you, as you're going about your day, you're in traffic, you're speaking with a friend, you're at a comedy show somewhere, now that you're a Toastmaster, ideas will be popping in your head for speeches and stories. You'll be with someone will tell something about themselves, and that might remind you of a similar situation with you. Take a moment and write it down, your stories in your life. When you go out to coffee, dinner, and you're sharing stories, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Write it down. Now, everywhere you are, it's story time. You're collecting stories all the time, never running out. If you are going to demand from yourself that you prepare a speech right now and come up with the perfect story right now, then you're demanding too much because your creative mind doesn't work like that. It's always working. So honor it, receive it with gratitude, write it down. Now, you don't have to use quotations in speeches, but some people do. Maybe you have a quotation from a relative or something, your grandmother, grandfather, an aunt or uncle, someone you've heard, someone you work with. Maybe you have come up with a piece of gold. You say, oh, that's quotable. I think I'll quote myself in a future speech. So at some point, you come up with your own quotations and you can say things in a quotable way. Now that monkey brain is quiet and we're focused, next, research? Nope. I know you want to, even those people who are on Facebook, you want to do your research. I know, because that's where you do your best research, right, on Facebook. That's what people tell me to do. Go do your own research. And there you go. Details. You have your heading and the details of it. Now, if you are doing research, you are getting the details for the chunk under the heading. And if you haven't written it down already, look up information mapping. Working in chunks quietens the monkey brain. If you have a wall of text, I find that people get ideas mixed up. And so instead of doing that, work in chunks. So the rule is whatever's under the heading must relate only to that heading. Now with a heading and a chunk, you now have a piece that you can use in different talks. You're allowed to do that. Question. If you already know the story, how much do you need to write down? How many of you are parents? Is anyone here a parent? Just the one. How many of you are children? Were once a child? Right. Okay. little better. How many can't stand answering questions where you put up your hand? Okay. Yes, exactly. Okay. If we were having coffee, so I put this to a coffee test. We're having coffee, we go to your favorite coffee shop and I say, tell me a bit about your children or tell me a bit about your childhood. Would you have to say, one moment, I'll take some notes and then I'll be able to answer your question? Has that ever happened to you? Just my childhood. I was born at a very young age, and you were scripting your story. Never, right? Why is it different here when we get up out of a chair and our brain has separation anxiety from the chair and we short circuit, now I can't talk anymore? Of course. When we're just starting in giving speeches, we might be a little bit nervous, but the answer to the question is you already know it. Speak about subjects you already know. Honoring that part in you that might be nervous, it's perfectly okay to write down a couple bullet points as memory jogs. Oh yeah, my dog Ringo. That's it. And I can tell the story of my dog Ringo anytime, anywhere. And that's perfectly fine. If you want to write, that's also perfectly fine, but don't say, oh, I don't have time. I'm going to quit Toastmasters because I'm spending so much time writing. Stop writing. Make a couple bullets, you're good to go. So we did what? 2 minutes on our thesis, 2 to 4 minutes on our heading. So we're up to say 6. And details might be another 2 minutes per heading of 2 headings, so another 4 more minutes. So we're up to 10 minutes of prep time. Is that okay? Better? Better than the 3 hours you're spending? Just some bullets. All right, moving along. Now, Ryan's time, you said begin with the opening, and it was sort of correct. And I'll show you why right now. In the opening, there's some elements that could go in there. There's many different ways of opening a talk. So we're going to do the basic literal opening. And in it, Opening and conclusion. In general, to arouse audience interest in the speaker and the speech. Now, the introducing Toastmaster does some of this work, but the opening of your speech arouses audience interest in what's coming up. Maybe it's an alarming statistic. Maybe it's getting into rapport, which means I'm like you. How many of you were also born at a young age? You know? Yes. Right. Then, so some people might tell a joke. There's many ways of opening. Deliver the thesis. So this is a literal, the thesis. I believe that our taxes are too low. You've now delivered the thesis statement. Then indicate a map. So you're indicating the structure to follow. So remember I said about our taxes were too low because we could increase our taxes to improve healthcare and our highways. Ladies and gentlemen, our taxes are too low. I believe we need to increase taxes so that we can improve our highways and our healthcare. No, I said highways first, so we reverse healthcare and our highways. If you get the order wrong, it doesn't matter. It's fine. And then I've delivered my map. So all that there would take, depending on a few other sentences that I might have said, somewhere in the neighborhood of 45 seconds to 1 minute, roughly 75 to 125 words-ish, depending on your speaking rate. How's that? If you leave out your thesis, and you're holding it in suspense, make sure there's a payoff later. So at this level, starting out, let's keep it literal. If you're delivering training, you will make it literal. It won't be some kind of secretive, amazing opening. In this session, we'll learn the 5 steps to impact in which you will have an easier time of preparing speeches. So I literally said that. In the conclusion.
Sorry, I have a question.
Yes.
Is it okay to ask a question now?
It's okay to ask a second question.
I get the aroused audience. I get the thesis. I don't get the map.
The map?
Yeah.
I believe we need to increase our taxes so that we can improve our healthcare and our highways. Healthcare and highways are the 2 headings.
So that's the map.
Right.
Okay.
Some people would say healthcare and then start explaining healthcare. No, at this point in the opening, you're just indicating what's to come. Now, the 2 major points, or the headings, better be healthcare and highways. Nothing else. Okay? Yeah. Ryan.
I think
One question. So with icebreakers, when you talk about yourself, what are some examples of thesis? Like, we're not really doing a speech on a topic other than ourselves. Just trying to wrap my head around incorporating this with
Yeah. Well, the icebreaker speech is an interesting one. It's an unusual one. You don't have to tell your life story. You don't have to tell a chronological story of you. You can tell one part of you, a small part of you. You can, that's it. Yeah. Basically, you don't have to tell all of you, try to jam it all in 5 to 7. You can tell some element of you. The idea that popped into my mind, because I just did a related speech, was an unrequited life, in which in my speech called Great Expectations, I talk about unrequited love turning into an unrequited life. So if you had a theme, you might be able to draw the theme and turn it into a title and then make that your thesis. So theme and thesis all together, you could do that. Is that helpful?
Yeah.
Draw something out of it. Like if you really enjoy science or something, the cosmos within. And so you're talking about your creativity and your curiosity as if in your mind was a cosmos and you might have an interest in cosmology. So there's one. Helpful?
Yep. Thank you.
Keep it going. Yep. Keep it going. So in the conclusion, indicate our map so that when it shows up, the audience knows they're in the conclusion. You don't need to say in summary or in conclusion. Not needed. You just change, everything about you changes, your pace, your tone changes. And when you indicate the map, ladies and gentlemen, because of the importance of healthcare and our highways, I truly believe we need to increase our taxes. So this would be in the conclusion. Fair assumption, I'm concluding now. And so one of the rules about concluding, no new information, no straying off into something new, unless you had a related story for your thesis and you're just finishing up to make an emotional appeal. Then it's arouse audience. Now we heard your story. We want the audience to take your talk home and do something with it. So arouse audience interest in applying the thesis. We might call this a call to action. It's a call to act or to think or to feel or to do something different from when you were first introduced. That's for the audience. Now I experimented with this and I did the entire speech from the perspective of the audience, the opening starting with I'd like to take you back to a time when you learned how to drive. Do you remember that? And the whole talk was you. And it worked. But in general, most of the time it'll be your story and then finishing with some sort of call for the audience. It doesn't have to be. The rules are flexible. My only test is, did it work? So that's the opening and conclusion. Finally, in no particular order, give it a title. The title might appear first. You might be inspired by a title. I once started a speech called The Power of Procrastination. All I had was the title, and I knew it was about procrastination. And it was an evangelical talk on how procrastinating would help you. Of course, it was completely insane. But anyway, title, you might not have a title until you're finished. And generally, the title would be simple. It would be not necessarily literal. In training, however, make it literal. 5 steps to more quickly preparing better speeches. Not exactly a title with pizzazz, but it is clear. Any questions on that?
I do have a question on the title.
Mhm.
Does the title have to relate to the theme? As in, when I'm talking in my speech, do I have to repeat my title multiple times to get the audience to know my title?
What was your question? Was it have to?
Yeah, is
Okay.
that, yeah, do I have to
Yeah.
do that?
Let's leave it with have to. And Craig would say, no, you don't have to. However, if you repeat it different ways, you create kind of a theme and it gives it a cohesiveness to it. So, yes, maybe. As I often say, try it out and see how it goes, see if it works. And if it doesn't work, try it a little differently. In your handout is a sample speech, which is full text. And there's some balloon boxes in there with arrows indicating its structure, how it works structurally. We can put up the link again to Great Expectations. It follows the model also. And when you see it now, you're going to laugh because you'll see that model. Oh, yeah, there it is. There it is. I bet he's going to, yeah, he did it. There it is. Now, what's interesting about that speech called Great Expectations is I sometimes break the model just to break your listener expectations, but that was just me having fun. Your homework, as I understand it, is to use the model and prepare a talk. My encouragement to you is don't spend too much time at it. Speak about a subject you already know and spend 10 minutes of prep time. You say, well, that's crazy. Years ago, I gave this talk at a place it was in Cornwall. At the next meeting, this guy said he went to the restaurant where they meet. He went early, had dinner and a beer, coincidentally. He just spent a few moments prepping, and people said it was the best speech he'd ever done. So if we say it's not possible, I'm here to suggest it is possible to create good enough speeches quickly using the 5 steps to impact. Step 1 is to come up with the... You guys don't like opening your mic, do you? Thesis. Step 2.
Headings,
Excellence. 3.
Details.
stories,
4,
Yeah.
A and B.
opening, closing.
Excellent. And in no particular order.
Title.
Title. In this way, you're going to speak more often, and some of you are going to go on to speak outside of Toastmasters, giving those life-changing speeches. As you're preparing for those, this workshop is going to echo in a positive way for you, and I will be living vicariously through you. Prashanti.
Thank you, Craig. You still have a few minutes if the audience has questions.
Yeah, I have a question. So for non-native speakers of English, how does your vocabulary, language, body language, tonal variety, how does that fit into your scheme of things to give an impactful speech?
And how did your question start?
For non-native speakers of English?
Is it helpful to say keep it simple? Fewer words is better? Tell a familiar story. So I actually coach someone for whom English is third language. And it's keeping it simple, familiar stories, don't try to get complicated. Is it a pronunciation question or a grammar question or both?
Both.
Both. So on pronunciation, speaking slower and rounding out the vowels, just rounding out the vowels just a little bit more. Sometimes certain dialects tend to speed up, and then the English speakers are having trouble processing it because it's going so fast. Just slow it down, rounding out the vowels. In the case of East Asian dialects, very small vowel sounds, so the vowels come by very, very quickly. So it's a bit of an exercise to slow it down and round it out. So that's on being understood. In terms of grammar, depending on where you're from, you may have learned, often it's an academic style that people have learned in different places. Maybe I'm going to speculate in, say, India, which has now a bit of a background with British imperialism and colonialism over there. They may have learned more of a British style of English, which tends to use the perfect form. Will have been a lot of extra words for it. So I recommend using the simple form, the simple verb form. I will go, instead of I will have been going, which is the future continuous. Perfect. Is any of that helpful?
Yeah.
Is it? Okay. Any other questions? Any other struggles?
I do have a question. Craig, I know you presented it from a speech or presentation perspective, which makes sense. Can you throw more light around for a training? Because I do a lot of trainings and I'm trying to wrap my head around the opening and also the conclusion, how to I know it's a bit, you mentioned the map would look a bit different, but if you would quickly go over that again, emphasizing
Sure.
for training, I would appreciate it.
Training is a different beast. You're going to spend more time in the open explaining the process of facilitation, of the training process. You will begin with the outcome, get the group's agreement that they want the outcome. So in this case tonight, it was getting agreement that you would like to reduce the amount of time and increase clarity and reduce your effort to get good enough speeches. And that was all right. We didn't cover off process, but so I assume in training you're doing like a full day's training or something like that.
It could be a couple of hours too.
Yeah. So depending what is, how much does the audience need to know about the process that's going to be followed? Do they need to know about break time, where the washrooms are, whether there's refreshments at the back, whether you're selling your books at the back? How much do they need to know about the training process? Is that any of that helpful? Which is different from what we're doing here, generally was considered platform speaking, and in a style more of a keynote.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
Maybe I should put it this way. So, for example, when we talked last week, we talked about different types of speeches they could inspire, motivate, or educate. And I do more of those educate type of, because I'm a business analyst and I go to different chapters to educate them on a particular topic about business analysis.
Mhm.
And it's a presentation form approach, not necessarily, but again, it's more like educate, not really inspire.
The BA Bach is the most inspiring set of reading I've ever done. The business analyst body of knowledge, for those who don't know. Even training can be entertaining, and of course it's informative, but you're allowed to entertain. You're allowed to use humor. Training tends to be a lot more literal, less figures of speech, less poetic. Is that? Yep, Ryan.
Quick question, because it's at the red light.
It just means she loves us.
Roughly, when you write a speech, how many words did you look at for like a 5 to 7 minute speech? Because I have 1,200 words, and I think
I don't need to do the math on that one unless you're coming up with a reason for speaking at a rapid pace, which you could do. Generally, it's somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to somewhere in the neighborhood of 100 to 125 words per minute.
Oh, okay, per minute.
It depends on the subject. It depends on you, but as a good start, 700 to 750 is a good beginning draft if you're scripting it all out. Maros, your mic is muted, but you just wanted me to say that.
Yeah, thanks. Quick question. So, do you follow these 5 steps to impact always, all the time, or is this just one of the many formula that you have and that you follow?
Do I do it all the time?
Mm-hmm.
I do it all the time. And of course, because I don't know if you can tell, I might be inclined to say things are not absolute. Sometimes I will break it just to see what happens, and then I don't win the speech contest. I experiment with it, but generally, if I'm in a hurry, yeah, I just do it and I'm done in a few minutes. I'm good to go. I once, years ago, how many of you are familiar with Jack Donahue, coach of the men's Canadian basketball team back in the 80s and 90s or something? No? Okay, just me. Very, very nice gentleman. He and I were going to, I think he was giving a workshop or something, and he and I went there ahead of time to set up the room. And I looked at him. He was standing at a table, a blank piece of paper, making some notes. One of the words he wrote down was watch. after his workshop, or during the workshop, when he started to tell the story, it was a joke about a watch, I realized then what he was doing at the start. He was just taking a few minutes just to prepare some notes as memory jogs for the structure. He knew the watch story and could tell it cold, but he just took the word watch and put it where he needed it. Is that helpful? Yeah, so what question was I answering? Do I do the method all the time?
if you are doing the if you do the method all the time.
Almost all the time. Yeah, it's just easier to answer yes. My favorite run of this workshop is when we take a couple of hours and we prep some speeches, and some people give those speeches, and I facilitate anyone who's sitting there. I always see this when we're meeting in person and someone's sitting there. And that's their judgment brain going, oh, that's not quite right. And I can see it. And then we work that out with them. And once that pattern is broken, then their creativity is free to flow. That's fun. And then they get up and give their speech in the workshop right there and then, which breaks their presupposition that they can't do this, proving to themselves with new evidence that their infinite creativity can deliver. That's fun.
I know you are very passionate about your students as well, and you would like to see their progress.
Yeah.
That's a great characteristic of a great teacher. Okay, then maybe I will pass this over to our Toastmaster, Alison.
Thank you, Craig, for your speech. Definitely given us all lots and lots to think about.